how do you coach them to do time management? And how do you know that they're working, that they're mixed? Are you enabling the second line to do proper one-on-ones? Are you deliberately designing what sort of Q&A should happen from second line to first line?
The conversations that the second line and the third line are having, the first line, have to be around not just the deals and the forecast and the pipeline, but to be around your cadence and your consistency.
You're dealing with a challenge, setting up and keeping a well-organized rhythm for your sales team to manage revenue effectively. It's like ensuring everyone is on the same page, working together smoothly to achieve success. The difficulty is in creating a structured plan that not only keeps things organized, but also helps everyone work together seamlessly to boost revenue. Without this structured plan, it's like trying to play a song with everyone offbeat. So what is the key to having a clear and organized approach to making sure your sales team moves in sync towards their goals? Mark Parrinello is the CRO at SentinelOne, where he leads a high-growth, world-class global sales organization that delivers cutting-edge cybersecurity solutions to enterprises. In this episode of the Run Revenue Show, Mark discusses how revenue leaders can achieve predictable outcomes through rigorous processes and data-driven decision-making, the challenging and pivotal role of first-line managers, how to use your sales team to run revenue, and the necessity of combining technological savvy with fundamental sales activities to scale businesses efficiently. Mark drops gems throughout this whole episode. Make sure to tune in to hear his playbook on running revenue in the most efficient way.
I'm Kyle Coleman, sales pro turned SVP of marketing at Clary. Run Revenue is the show where revenue pros learn to stop revenue leak, achieve revenue precision, and grow their companies and careers.
This is Run Revenue Show with Kyle Coleman.
Welcome to the Run Revenue Podcast. I am the substitute host. Normally, it's Mr. Kyle Coleman. I am super fired up to be here with Mark Parrinello. Mark, great to see you.
Good to see you as well, buddy. It's been a while. Always good to talk to you.
I know, it's so great. All right, we've got a long history together, and we're going to be talking about talent today. And no better person to riff with on talent than you, given your history. I'm just thinking about your background from the early days at CA to NetApp to Nimble to Cohesity and SentinelOne. Just first of all, kudos on your career. Amazing career. You and your family should be very proud. And there's some news that we want to share is that you have officially decided to retire.
I knew that SentinelOne would be my last gig. I always knew that. When I came and I said I'd give it 3 years, I'd give them 3 years. It's been 4. It's been an amazing run. One of the best runs I've ever had, frankly. Enjoyed it to an amazing people. It's always hard to meet the people. I'm just at a point in my life where I'm done running the number and there's other things I want to do in the next chapter of my career or my life. And it's not running the number and being the CRO anymore. And that thing's run its course. So this has been planned out for literally about a year, I'd say. And it took a few months, about 4 or 5, to get my backfill in place and aligned. And that's been smooth. And SentinelOne folks have been amazing. It's been really on the up and great. And I just couldn't be happier with the entire process that we've been through with this. And excited about SentinelOne's future, frankly.
Yeah, no, great company, great leadership, great trajectory, thanks in large part to the work you put in place and the team that you put in place and running revenue. Maybe walk the hierarchy of talent from exec down to rep, just for fun. And let's talk about qualities that you see, what you look for, because how you built so many different armies at different companies. Maybe we can start with your replacement. And what were the qualities you were looking for? As we talk about in the industry, right? People, the CROs, one of the biggest jobs of the CRO is revenue governance, controlling the outcomes, alignment, discipline, accountability. They've got this big army. They've got to be a system level thinker. So what sort of profile did you look for in your replacement? And what were some of the qualities that are more of a deep dive on the ideal candidate?
Yeah, I think one of the main things that we were looking for is someone who was seeing 1 to 2 billion. And if you start from that, then you're really throwing a lot of people out because there's not a lot of people who have actually done $1 to $2 billion. And so once you're trying to look for that, for us, we really wanted someone who knows what a big company should act and feel like and how to run strategic sales plays and all those things. They're obvious. But someone who's not too far removed from the field. Because at the end of the day, SentinelOne is an amazing culture and still deserves an executive who gets into the deals and spends time with the customers and the partners. And so we're looking for that balance of someone who really knows how to own and operate at a big company level, but someone who could take us to that another level, but also someone who will get in the weeds and still exemplify all the things that we want to see out of the SentinelOne culture. It took a few months, but we found Michael, and he's an amazing leader. And so far, so good. I've been thrilled with the transition we've made with him. He's great. Everyone loves him. He's going to do great things for them.
Can I ask, why do you want to make sure that you have someone that can go in the weeds? What's the why behind that? Is it they want to be, the troops need to be inspired, or is it the fact that they need to understand and pattern match for themselves? How do you think about that?
It's a great question, and I'll do my best to try and answer it. SentinelOne is marching towards $1 billion, then quickly thereafter, $2 billion. But at the heart of SentinelOne, it's still a grinder mentality. It's still a win at the field with the customers, with the partners, and we still have an entrepreneurial spirit that we never want to get rid of. And so I think if you bring in someone who's really good on strategy and really polished and talk to boardrooms and all that, and all those things are needed. If you don't get someone who get into the deals and into the weeds and go on customer visits, then it's not going to work long-term for the company. And that's as best I can answer. I hope that makes sense. And it's really hard to find someone who can do both of those. We think we found in Michael. I know we found in Michael. I'm really excited about him.
Does that sound like culture? It's like a cultural thing you built?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I built it, because I always think culture it begins and ends with the CEO. And Tomer has built an amazing culture, but then as being a CEO, you can only do so much. And then there's some layers below you that have to own that culture. And I'll give you just one quick example of that, why this culture SentinelOne has been so great. I have a saying, if you want people to act like adults, you treat them like adults. And when we decided we were going to go and find my backfill, we were on the border line of, do we announce or not? Because if you announce that Mark's retiring and you're looking for his backfill, you let people come up with their own observations and ideas of what really is going on. You distract. But the flip side is, we're looking for his backfill. Here's the process. Here's how it's going to flow. And right now, Mark's running the show as normal. We did it that way, and I'm so glad we did. And it was a little clunky for a while, but it worked out. And at the end of the day, what to me was magical is getting the right person in place in Michael. And then we did an all hands. The quarter ended where he got on. I ran the normal kind of, here's how the quarter flowed. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. Here's top of mind things. And then Michael and I did a Q&A session for about 45 minutes. That handoff and transition was mature. It was authentic. And it was everything we told him it was going to be. And that's what made me so proud about what we did and how we did it. And that's, to me, what exemplifies the SentinelOne culture.
Great move by you, being open, being transparent, going back to your commentary about being an adult. And can I ask about what type of profile did you want to avoid when we think about the CRO, the revenue leader? What things were you saying, not at SentinelOne, no way?
I have a saying, and I say all hat, no cattle. And that can be for a CRO or a sales rep. We wanted to avoid someone who was the been there, done there, that looked and sounded the part, but were all hat, no cattle. And that's what was hard. It took a while to make sure we found, and we did.
It's that way with all exceptional salespeople and through the leadership hierarchy, because they're all great salespeople. It's hard.
All know how to run the chart and tell you what you want to hear. And then when you're trying to hire, you're trying to sift through that and ask enough questions to understand, is this person all hat, no cattle, or can they do the part?
For the audience, come down and just run down the revenue hierarchy from Michael all the way down for your multiple lines of managers down to a rep. Maybe have some fun. Think about the profiles, the qualities that you look for. Can you tell us about your org design right now? How many lines of management do we have?
2 layers in APJ, 3 layers in EMEA, and 4 layers now in Americas. So first line, second line, third line in the Americas. Gentleman is the fourth line leader. Quite a big organization, pretty robust. It's a way balanced business. I think you know that. We've talked about that in the past. About 30% of the revenues comes from international alone, 35% on any given quarter. So when you're talking about the talent, which is what you're on to now, there's a lot of dynamics of what you're looking for in your fourth line leaders and your third line leaders, and your second line leaders, your first line leaders. For instance, what SentinelOne needs in a first line leader in India is completely different than what SentinelOne might need as a first line leader in Ohio or in New York.
Can we talk about that? Maybe we go first line up through, call it fourth line. Can we just talk about when you're assessing talent at that first line, and then let's talk about that node in the hierarchy.
I always do a 1-to-3 ratio, meaning for every 3 leadership roles that are out there, 1's external and 2's internal. I try and go by that. Well, you have to show mobility and people that are moving up in the organization. That's what I do. I love doing that. And so I love watching the promotions of people that are growing. You're grooming them and they're growing. However, about every 3 times, you have to get that external knowledge where someone comes in and says, why do you do that? Well, let me bring my playbook in. So I'm always trying to follow a 1-to-3 scenario. It depends on if you're hypergrowth or not, though, because what I found at SentinelOne is we more did 1-3 the other way, where we were just growing so damn fast. You had to bring in people that just knew how to do the job, because the job you were hiring to do is going to be 2 times that job in a year. Are you at 50 to 100? Are you at 100 to 400? Are you at 500 to billion? And depending on that, then you can mix and match those scenarios. Now that you have that, I just level set you with that.
So your ratio 1-to-3, 3-to-1, depending on scale. What I thought was really nice is bringing in a new set of eyes always to show you where your baby is ugly on occasion because you didn't see it, they saw it, or they have a new thing. Now, when you think about the FLM, that front line, first line, what qualities, where would be like the top 3 things that you look for in that first line manager?
To me, I've said this for 30 years. First line is the hardest and the most important job, in my opinion, in any company, because all the stuff flows down. You expect your first line to execute on all the things the company needs, but all the stuff flows up. They're involved in the deals. They have to be intimate with the reps. They have to be very diligent in pipeline inspection. They've got to balance all of this stuff. And so in my opinion, first line is the most important hire.
Whenever anybody asks me about, hey, help us with rep productivity, we need to increase rep productivity, I say, the first place you start is not with the reps. You actually start with the first line manager because they have the hardest job. If you can make them more productive, they've got 5 to 10 reps. That's where you get a lot of yield if you're going to invest in any person in the revenue hierarchy.
I'll go one step further on that. I believe, by the way, that you should hire someone responsible for sales enablement and grow that out. And your sales enablement team can put together amazing programs to help with efficiencies and everything else. But if you don't have that buy-in from sales management to be diligent and spend time on the journey and all the programs they put in place, you're not going to get the sales opportunity you want to get. So you need those first-line managers to buy in. I'll tell you, you asked about what to look for in talent, but I think that the one thing that is arguably the most important thing that first or second line can do, but it's rare they do it, is inspection of early stage pipeline. If you think about the pillars of things that you want your sales leaders to do, forecast, inspire and motivate, be involved in the deals, be involved with the customers and the partners, put together a channel and sales plans. If you think about those 4 or 5 pillars, there's some of them they just naturally have to do. They spend time with the reps, they spend time with the customers, they spend time with the partners, they forecast, they get involved in deals. So what goes by the wayside, because there's only so many hours, I've seen this over and I've been guilty of this as much as anyone else. If you're second, third, and fourth line management, you have to build the cadence You have to demand the cadence that your second, first, third line, anything underneath you has a cadence in place to look at that early stage of the pipeline inspection and move those things along. If they don't, you wake up one day, whether they've hit their forecast or not, you wake up one day and you won't have the rep productivity you want, because all those new reps you're trying to ramp up, if you're not helping them advance the early stage, you're going to be lost at some point. I've seen it catch up to so many companies. It's caught up to me multiple times, Andy, multiple times.
That'll actually be a very interesting digression from talent I'd like to just touch on. You talked about the revenue cadence. What I feel like is arguably the most important topic is this topic around the revenue cadence. And what I find in companies is many CROs don't really know exactly how their cadence is being run. They've got an okay model of it, and they don't know if it's actually being run the right way. When we think about it, I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Mark. When we think about a revenue cadence, is if I go street level for the audience here, every meeting of every day, of every week, of every month of the quarter, mapping that blueprint out, right? From one-on-ones to pipeline inspections to PG Mondays to slip deal reviews to running that, whether it's new logo or upsell, cross-sell, right? And really understanding that blueprint and where you're good or bad. An example is WTF, you don't do slip deal reviews every week. Are you kidding me? You wait until it's too late. When do we start doing out-quarter management? We need to be doing that much earlier in our cadence. How do you think about the design of the cadence, the optimization of it, and getting yield from it?
So first and foremost, I agree with you. In every company I've ever went to, the first thing I build is what I call a sales infrastructure cadence. And it's exactly that. If you picture 2 pages of a PowerPoint slide, and it's Monday staff call, it walks through in detail when it is, what it's for, who attends, how often you do it. You just go down the list, everything's set up all the way from that to the forecast, to deal inspection, to big deal reviews, to one-on-one deep dives, to skip level deep dives, sales all hands, QBRs, board level reviews, e-staff, all that stuff.
I'm going to want to ask you something, Mark, just for the audience. Why do you do that first? Why?
Because one, I have to build my calendar and get all the things that I want to do on paper and then put it down. But then two, I want to send it off and then get everyone that has to attend all those different events bought in and understanding and what's expected of them, what they're to attend, why, when it is, what it's there for. You can deviate off that, obviously.
Is it fair to say that what you're doing is you're trying to create a standard? Trying to create a way in which you can govern and control what the army is doing. You want to have across your thousands of reps, alignment, accountability, discipline. You want to control the behaviors so you can achieve the right predictable outcomes. Is that fair?
Yes, it's well said. And to be clear, I learned that 4, maybe 5 companies ago. But for the first 15 years of my sales leadership, I did not have that cadence. I had to learn it like everything else. Someone comes in and teaches you, hey, you don't have this? You got to build this. Why would you not have this? Then you do it.
We like to think about this as the beginning, the blueprint, the foundation of revenue governance, of to achieve a level of precision. Now, coming back to talent, so great. We just had talked about governance, the revenue cadence. Do you think that to what degree does the frontline manager need to be a student of the cadence? I want to come up to second line, third line, and fourth line. We'll spend a little bit of time on that. I guess that maybe it's an obvious answer, the level of rigor that they need in place, because a lot of times the risk is that they do too much deal deep diving and they end up being a super rep, not an FLM. Being the guy or gal who comes in and can do the fun is more, they don't graduate from closer to a little bit of process management.
I expect less process out of first line than I do out of second line. All the way up the ladder, I expect more process because you just have to have more process to scale a business. I learned that the hard way as well. So with first line, it's an art. They have to have some cadence around early pipeline inspection, forecasting. They have to have a cadence infrastructure, of course. But I'm really leery of giving that first line leader too much process. So just some pillars to anchor on that they can run their day-to-day and calendarize out for the next 3-4 months, but not too much where they're too stringent, because I want them to be flexible enough to go fly and work on a deal, go spend time with partners and customers in the field, and do all the things you need them still to do.
How do you coach them to do time management? And how do you know that they're working, that they're mixed? Are you enabling the second line to do proper one-on-ones? Are you deliberately designing what sort of Q&A should happen from second line to first line? What are you talking about?
It's a transition. You're asking me what I do. And here in the past at SentinelOne, I'm so far removed from some of the first line. I guess I wasn't when I started, but I am now. It's hard to say what I specifically do. But I will tell you, the conversations that the second line and the third line are having, the first line, have to be around not just the deals, the forecast, and the pipeline, but to be around your cadence and your consistency. How much time are you spending with those people? You've got 3 reps that are producing and 3 reps that aren't. How much time are you doing early stage inspection? Or are you going on calls with those newer reps? Well, no, because they don't have any deals. To show and teach them, to know that you've made the right decision to hire them on. Therefore, you have to be in the field with them. So I think that those conversations are massively important between second line and first line around that.
You've used the word process, more process as we go up. That's obviously a very generic commentary. Can you give us a little bit of color for the audience of what you've seen in your career as the difference between the fourth line manager versus the first line, as an example of their day, their week, their month, their quarter on process?
You have to build that and then adhere to that within reason. The more process you need to be able to scale your business. A great example is I've seen so many sales leaders in my day that are really good deal review people. They've got a nose for a deal. They've got a nose for how to get a deal done. They got an intuition on when a deal is going to close, and they forecast accurately based on that. But you will get to a point, whether it's first line or second line or third line, where intuition and instincts just aren't going to cut it. You have to have the science behind it as well. That's how I learned to grab Clary, frankly. I was a deal guy. I had great instincts and intuition on how deals close on a forecast. And I think that applies to all things process. You have to have calendarized process. You have the management cadence that I talked about, the management infrastructure cadence, and things like that. You just cannot scale without science to go with the art.
Let's talk about a little bit about science, a little bit about data. I don't want to make it a Clary pitch, but thank you for that little call out. If you just say generically, think about your career when you started and think about where you are today with the type of platforms and the access to data. Can you maybe take us through what management used to be like, what it is like now, given platforms like Clary, and maybe just for fun?
I think something we haven't talked about, Andy, when we're talking about CRO, we started off talking about CROs. We spent a lot of time on first line and we dabbled with second, third, and fourth line. You got to be tools efficient because the world's changing. You asked earlier about what we were looking for, what we didn't want out of a CRO. And when I talk about old hat, no cattle, we didn't want you a spreadsheet guy. People like myself, the leaders, have to be adept at accessing and implementing tools to help them scale, whether it be forecasting or enablement. So I think tools has been and is going to become a bigger part of how you assess.
To repeat for understanding, you're saying we need someone who's, I don't want to say a tech savant, but tech savvy, meaning the old days, you had people who could run a multi-billion-dollar company on.
You can't run a multi-billion-dollar revenue number as a CRO on spreadsheets or with a really good ops guy or down. You have to have tools like Clary to help you. You have to have tools to help your sales enablement team make your reps more productive faster. And so I think there's been an explosion of tools. I think it's going to continue. And when I've been looking for talent, again, first line or fourth line, I do assess they understand the need to adapt and implement tools, be what they've used in the past, and see what they've learned from them and how they're going to help me scale my business faster by using those tools to implement faster.
Super interesting. I'm just trying to summarize the sections of our time together: talent, tech, and process. It's really, it almost is the people, process, and tools, right? Framework. You look at it in the old McKinsey book, our MBA books, and it still just come down to that.
What is the old adages was a people, programs, and process. And I've always used the 3 Ps being people, partners, and process. And I love programs into process. And I don't think you can scale a business without the right level of partner strategies in your ecosystem. I think the tools and the tech is a part of that process. Aren't looking for tools that help you scale faster and help you get reps more productive quicker and help you predict the business, then you're missing out.
You got to be tech savvy. You got to lean into tech and have the competencies.
Even at the rep level, when I do interview, I still try and figure out how tech savvy the reps are, because reps utilize tools to be more efficient. So the days of when I was a rep and I just went on 20 calls a week because that's how I did it. Nowadays, you can't live on that either. The world's changed. And if you're not efficiently utilizing tools to be more productive and to find ways to get into accounts and everything, then you're missing it as well. So you've got to be tech savvy.
Totally agree. I would just add to that is that what I am so excited about is 2 dimensions. One, obviously, all of the generative AI that's coming through. And 2, the tech savvy nature of these young reps and these young SDRs, and the talk about their tech proficiency across multiple tools, that it's almost like their clock speed is just far greater and capacity is far greater. And I feel like you marry those 2 things, productivity is going to increase pretty dramatically across the revenue process due to tech and talent.
Thinking about ways to assess talent, I do look for that. I think you said a key thing there, Andy, marry the 2. Because nowadays, if you don't know how to become tech, if you're a sales rep and you aren't tech savvy, you're not going to get further and faster. And I tell this to my oldest son, who's a sales rep now, and he's tech savvy. Do not forget, the old adage still is in play when you're a sales rep, which is the more activity you have, the more opportunity you find. The more opportunity you find, the more you put in your pipeline. The larger pipeline, the more opportunity you have for success. So at the end of the day, it is still a numbers game. They're getting away with, they can do so much because they're tech savvy, but don't forget it's still a numbers game. You got to see people.
It reminds me, by the way, both of my boys right now, they're looking for internships. I sat them down on my whiteboard right here in the back and I drew the funnel. I said, you guys, it is a friggin' numbers game. Here's the deal.
That's why I think it's important that you said it a few minutes ago. You marry the 2. You cannot survive in this day and age without being tech savvy, but you also cannot be as good as you want to be without still having big activity. Activity is still, at the end of the day, what counts in sales, in my opinion.
100%. Fundamentals still exist. Totally. I think tech will help them have more activity, drive more activity, and not only drive more activity, higher quality activity, which should drive higher quality conversions and higher quality close. Okay, final comment I want to make for the audience for fun here, Mark. Just thought it'd be fun to give the audience a little walk down memory lane of when Andy Byrne first met Mark Parrinello. So we were in Vegas and you were sitting down. We were at Nimble and I came up to you wanting to do a demo and you were reluctant. You were like, okay, let me see. Not too sure. You were one of the hardest customers to get onto Clary. You were that reluctant user.
And if you remember, at the time, we were talking about using it for mobility for the reps, just to be more efficient in the field. I was, at that time, that guy that lived on spreadsheets and a bunch of operational data that I got from my ops people, because I was always a data guy and I was a good deal guy with good instincts. That job, I went from running the West in NetApp to running the Americas for Nimble. I quickly, and you're right, I was very reluctant because I had my playbook. I had my intuitions and my instincts, and I didn't need Andy Byrne and his company helping me with that. But I quickly figured out that I cannot scale the way I want to run the Americas unless I had a tool and the science behind my instincts and my intuition. If I think back about that again, 2014, 10 years, almost exactly 9.5 years ago, could not have done the things that I've done in my career for my companies without figuring out how to use Clary back then.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that. I would just say that it is a total honor and privilege to be on this podcast with you because you have achieved legendary status. But I just want to say thank you. And you have your fingerprints are all over our roadmap and what we've built for customers and the value we've delivered. And I just think it's been a real special relationship. So I appreciate you.
Thank you and the team for all you guys have done for me at SentinelOne and my past companies. And we'll continue the friendship and the talks from time to time as well.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the time.
Good chat with you. See ya. Bye-bye.
Don't let what you heard today go to waste. Take 2 minutes to download today's checklist to get your priorities in line for the week. You can find that linked in our show notes. And if you liked what you heard, make sure you give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. We'll be back next Monday with more to help you win your week.